Hey guys, I seriously apologize. First of all, I think I'm having audio issues. So if my audio sounds a little funky, I don't know what's going on, but I apologize. And second of all, uh, Melanie had I don't want to call it an emergency. She had a little family issue this morning. Her son-in-law got sick and she had to go take care of the babies so that his wife could go to the hospital with them. So uh, that's why I'm by myself today. So this is one of those sometimes Melanie Clark shows. And so we had to postpone our guest. Carolyn Willman was supposed to be our guest today. Uh, Hopefully, we're going to have her at a future date. I didn't get a chance to talk to Melanie about that, but I would imagine we're going to have her later. She's a really good person to have on. She calls herself the contest queen because she knows all about how to enter and finagle all the rules of contests. And she has a podcast about that. And it's a very interesting podcast. I have to apologize for not knowing exactly where you can find it. The only where I found it was on Audible, which is the Amazon company where you can download audiobooks. They also have podcasts there, and I found her podcast there. And it's called The Contest Queen. And I listened to the first episode. It was really quite good. She had a guest on there named Jason Block, who is also involved in that kind of thing. And they discussed the Netflix documentary, Pepsi Where's My Plane? I don't know if you're familiar with that. I really wasn't that familiar with it until I listened to the podcast. It's very interesting. They had a commercial on, and it looked like it was around 1980-ish. And I remember the commercial vaguely. And in the commercial, they were advertising that you could get these Pepsi points to buy stuff. And one of the things they had in the video was a Harrier jet. And underneath it said 7 million points. Well, it was supposed to be a joke. But this gentleman whose name escapes me, he didn't take it as a joke. So he bought 7 million points on this website Pepsi had set up, where I forget how much money it was, but for about $700,000, he was able to buy enough Pepsi points to get the airplane. So he demanded the airplane. And they said, well, it was only a joke. And he said, well, you didn't say that. And they really didn't say that. So they offered him $1 million to just forget it, and he turned it down. He wanted the jet, and they ended up in court. Pepsi had way more attorneys than he could afford, and he ended up not getting. I don't know what he got because I haven't seen the documentary. It's a 4-episode documentary that details what he went through trying to get the jet. According to Carolyn, it's a very good documentary, so I'm going to have to watch it. So we're going to have her on. And like I say, she's very interesting. So I'm looking forward to chatting with her. It's going to be fun. So anyway, like I said, only me today. I had to kind of scramble to put something together for a show. Now, I know about 2 things, basically. I know about Star Trek, which I've beaten you over the head with on the last 2 or 3 times when I had to do the show by myself. And, I don't want to keep doing that because you're going to get tired of listening to it. So the other thing I know a lot about is this company behind me. This picture is the lobby of Red Digital Cinema's manufacturing center here in Southern California, which is in Lake Forest or Irvine. It's right next to Irvine. And that's where they do the testing and some of the assembly of the cameras. There was a time when our facility in Lake Forest did all of the manufacturing and assembly of the cameras. Unfortunately, due to financial, the times, how they are, we had to do like a lot of companies did, and we had to move our machining facilities offshore, shall we say. Now, our cameras are still assembled in North America. They're not assembled in the United States, but they are assembled in North America, just south of the border. So some of our friends south of the border assemble our cameras for us and do a fine job. They do a good job. So it's good because we've given them some jobs in areas where, they have a hard time making ends meet. So it's good. It's good to help people. But all of the testing and everything to make sure that the parts that we have manufactured offshore are correct. That's one of the things I do. I inspect those parts to make sure they're good. And we have testing facilities where they put the camera together and they test it, make sure it works right. So all of that is done here in the good old USA. So the quality of the product is guaranteed by the fact that it's done here by me. Well, I don't do the electronic testing because that's not something I know, but I do I don't know, mechanical testing. I check the actual shape and size of everything and make sure it's right because it matters. Because if you attach something and it's not quite in the place it's supposed to be, the camera's not going to work right. So that's important. So anyway, that's my job here at Red. And I've worked here about 5 years. I have most of my experience in the industry in this. I haven't really been in this industry. Most of my experience is in aerospace. I worked on the rocket for Elon Musk there at SpaceX. I worked on fuel lines for most of the jets and the space shuttle at Arrowhead Products. And I worked on the B-2 bomber, F-18, F-5, F everything there. Well, no, I don't want to say F everything, but fighter planes at Northrop for 26 years. So I've been doing this for quite a while. But anyway, I really like Red. Red's a nice place. They treat me very well. They're very friendly. It's just a really good place to work. I have to tell you, it is. Let me show you a picture. This was our first camera, the Red One, and it revolutionized the motion picture industry. It brought in the digital imaging and started getting away from film and into digital, which everything is now. I mean, I don't, I'm sure there are still a few movies shot on film, but not many. Most of what's shot is shot digitally. And this was really what pushed the industry towards digital cameras, was Red One. Now, I'm going to show you a video. It's about an 8.5 minute video coming from the Camera Zone off of YouTube. So I thank them for the use of this video, and I encourage you to sign up, subscribe to their site, because if you're into cameras, it's really pretty cool. They have a lot of information, and they did a documentary on the history of red cameras. So I'm going to play that for you in a little bit. Um, like I say, I'm sorry Melody's not here with us. This show just works better when Melody and I can go back and forth. And Melody has so much knowledge, especially about the entertainment industry. I mean, she's been involved in it since she was a teenager. She was involved in let's see, Bobby Benton's fan club. She was, I don't know if she ran the fan club, but she had some involvement in Bobby Benton he's still alive, but he doesn't sing too much anymore, I wouldn't imagine. But he had a wonderful voice and tons of hit songs. There I Said It Again, Blue Velvet, Blue on Blue, Mr. Lonely, just a lot of great songs. I listen to his music. I have it on my iPad. I listen to it all the time. Uh, and Melody was also involved in Mitch Vogel's fan club. Now, Mitch Vogel was the red-haired, freckle-faced kid on Bonanza, where they were trying to bring in a younger audience into the show. So they brought in Mitch Vogel. He was supposed to be Will Gear, that was on the Waltons, that played the grandfather on the Waltons. He did a season, well, actually a few episodes on Bonanza, and Mitch Vogel was his grandson. And I think they killed Will Gear off or something on the show, and had so Mitch Vogel moved in with the Cartwrights there on Bonanza and became part of the show. And Melody was, if not the president, one of the higher ups of his fan club. Pardon me. And he was a nice fella. I met him once. He came out to, I think Melody was a vice president, because this other young lady that was running his fan club, Melody went to her house. And then I took Melody over there to the house, and Mitch Vogel came out and I mean, he didn't have to do that. He came out and introduced himself to me and said hello. And like I say, very nice fella. And then Melody got to be a fan of the show Dark Shadows, as I'm sure any of you that watch the show know that. And Melody was part of the fan club. She wrote she was one of the writers of the Dark Shadows Companion. If you've ever, I mean, it's widely read out there. I don't know how many copies they've sold, but many, many, many copies. So if you ever want to read something Melody had some involvement in, get a hold of a copy of the Dark Shadows Companion. If you like the show, you got to have one of those. It's kind of like the Star Trek Encyclopedia. If you're into Star Trek, you should own the Star Trek Encyclopedia. Although the one I've got's kind of outdated, because there's been about 6 or 7 Star Trek series since that was out, but I still like it because that's the one that I got all my autographs in. So I used to take my encyclopedia with me to the conventions, and I would have the people autograph their picture in there. And a lot of them that really didn't like to sign autographs or charged a bunch of money to sign autographs. Although at the time when I was doing that, the idea of charging these like big money for an autograph, it wasn't there. You were buying the photograph. If you brought something there, most of the time they'd sign for nothing. But what they preferred is you would buy one of the photographs for $20 and they would autograph it, because they only paid $1 for the picture, so you were paying $19 for their autograph. And most of them would take a photo with you for nothing. I have photos of me with, I don't know, a bunch of people. Not so much Star Trek people, but just people in general, and people that I got to be, I don't want to say friends, but acquainted with, like Linda Blair uh, from The Exorcist. Very nice lady, very beautiful woman, just very, very lovely lady, and very nice. She donated a lot of what she made to, I forget what charity she was involved in, but a lot of them, it seemed to be mainly the ladies used to do that. They would fund the charity that they were interested in by selling autographs. Yvonne Craig, that was Batgirl, and she was a Green Orion slave girl in one of the Star Trek episodes. She used to fund a animal rescue thing. That, I mean, she funded it. Period. It wasn't. She didn't donate to it. She funded it, and she did that with her autographs. And she, it was funny. She used to apologize for charging, and then she would explain why she was charging and what she was doing with the money. So it was nice. I mean, and there were, you know, those conventions back then, they were different than they are now. You know, most of the actors didn't even have a handler or security or anything. They were just there. William Wyndham, who did Star Trek, he had a show called The Farmer's Daughter. He had a ton of stuff. He was just a real nice fella, real nice guy. And uh, Irwin 90, Irwin 98 Keys. I think it was 98 or 99, one of those numbers. He played one of Fred's Lodge brothers in the Flintstone movie, the film movie. Real tall, big guy. He passed on, unfortunately, way too early. Carol Strucken. Now, I got a funny story for you about Carol Strucken. Was the real tall guy that played Lurch in the Addams Family Values movie, and he was in Men in Black. He played the guy, the tall alien whose head opened up, and he had that little alien guy in his head. He was sitting there signing autographs. He played Mr. Hom on Star Trek Next Generation. He was Major Barrett Luxana Troy's butler, aide, whatever you want to call him. And so he was sitting there signing autographs. And Peter Mayhew, that played Chewbacca, came walking up there, and Carol Strucken stood up, shook hands with him, and they talked for a few minutes. And I stayed there because I hadn't got my item signed yet, so I was waiting. So Peter Mayhew walked off, and Carol Strucken sat down. And he was going, and I'd say, "What's the matter?" And he says, "No," he says, "that's the first time in my life I've ever had to look up at anybody." Which that was pretty, because they were both a couple of tall fellas. Two tallest people I'd ever stood next to. And I hung around with some tall people because my girlfriend, Monica, when I was in my 20s, her brothers were 6'8" and 6'9". So I was used to being around tall people, but Carol Strucken and Peter Mayhew were almost a foot taller than that. So that was a pretty impressive fella. Very nice, too. Peter Mayhew also, very nice fella. This convention that I was at, they had all of the Star Wars people except for the four main people. You know, by that time, Sir Alec Guinness was gone. He had passed on. And this convention didn't have the money to bring in Harrison Ford or Mark Hamill or Carrie Fisher, but they had Kenny Baker. It was R2D2. Oh, and they didn't have Anthony Daniels either. He was busy doing something, so there was no Anthony Daniels. But they had I forget the fellow's name. I always forget his name, that played Willow. He had played one of the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi, and he was there. Not real nice guy. And two or three of the other little people that played the Ewoks were also there. Another funny story. I was standing in line to get Kenny Baker's autograph, and he was at a table, and he was sitting right next to Jeremy Bulloch, who played Boba Fett in Empire Strikes Back. And he was having a bad day, I guess, Jeremy Bulloch, because this lady came up. He was kind of rude to her. So when the lady got done, walked off, Kenny Baker turned to him. They're both British, by the way. And Kenny Baker spoke with a pretty heavy British accent. So he turns to Jeremy Bulloch and he says, "You know, that lady was just here getting an autograph, and you had to act like a wanker." He says, "You know, it could have been anybody in that bloody mask." It's true. But, it's nice to know Kenny Baker was considerate to the fans. And he was. He was a very nice fella. In fact, most of them. And Jeremy Bulloch was fine to me. I don't know why I think he listened to Kenny Baker, because the next thing I did was I got in his line to get an autograph. I had a copy of Starlog. I had a copy of Starlog that had a story about Jeremy Bulloch in it, and I got him to autograph the book. I have to pull those magazines out someday, let somebody else have them that's younger, will be around longer, pass them on. So watch out. I may find you out there and give you something, because that's what I'm going to do with my collection. I decided that since eBay is so hard to deal with anymore, and they charge so much in fees and so forth, and rather than make a few bucks on something that I picked up and hung on to for a long time, I'm just going to find a good young collector that's interested in that, and I'm going to give it to him. Maybe have them pay me the postage for sending it to them or something. So watch out. I may give you some. And I've got some pretty good stuff. I do. I've got 2 posters that I bought. I don't know if any of you remember the Home Shopping Network. It was one of the very early online things like that. So it was like if Amazon came into your house and tried to sell you stuff. Well, that's what it was. And they had this woman who ran the show, and she was really funny. I think she went on into acting. I don't remember her name, but she was real good. And a lot of people watched the Home Shopping Network. It was just fun to watch. And they would have people on there that had some involvement. They used to have Steve Sansweet, who I know, name dropper that I am. He was the director of specialty marketing for Lucasfilms. And I made him an action figure one time. And this was back when it was hard to do that. And I had a friend who knew digital imaging and stuff, and he made the background he took the Lando Calrissian action figure artwork, and he stuck my friend's head on the picture. And then I took a G.I. Joe. One of the characters had a face very similar to Steve Sansweet, and I put his head on a Lando Calrissian action figure, and then I cleaned up a bubble real good, polished it up, and I put this figure on the background of that artwork that my friend made and glued it to an old Lando Calrissian card, and it looked really good. And I gave it to Steve Sansweet. So this is a good story. So I don't know, a year later, we were at the same convention where I gave Steve the action figure. These people came up to my table where I was selling. You know, we were toy dealers, so I was selling stuff, and they came up and they were all dressed in the Star Wars gear, you know. And so they asked me if, you know, they were telling me that they were USC film students, and they were trying to get a hold of George Lucas to interview him for their project. So I told them, I somehow it came up that I knew Steve Sansweet. So they asked me if I could do anything. So I I had a couple of Steve's cards. So I gave him one of Steve's cards, and I wrote my name on the back, and I put, you know, gave you the action figure, you know, to remind him, because he met tons of people. So I gave him the card. And I said, call Steve, tell him how you know me, and see if he can do anything for you. I says, I don't know that he can, but see if he can do something for you. So another year later, well, actually about 6 months, because they used to have the show every 6 months. So I was at the show at the Pasadena Convention Center, and so I'm at my table. These same kids come up. They all get in front of the table and they kneel and they start bowing. This is, we're not worthy, you know, because that was, I forget what cartoon it was when they used to say that. And I said, why are you doing that? And they said, we called Steve Sansweet and he got us in at Skywalker Ranch, and we were able to interview George Lucas. And it says, well, you know, when you gave us that card, we figured you were just full of bull. You know, it turned out, you know, and I said, God, if I known I could go to Skywalker Ranch, I would have done it. So I never got to go. But I still talk to Steve every once in a while here on Facebook, and he remembers me. He's still got the action figure in his gigantic warehouse full of Star Wars stuff. He said he was going to try to find it, but he hadn't got back to me about that. But anyway, so that's an interesting story. You know, just one of the many stories that I know, and it's entertainment related. So, but I got sidetracked. The posters that I got off of the Home Shopping Network, they were of all of the captains on Star right after Kate Mulgrew started on Voyager, which I was at the Creation Con where they premiered her, where she was introduced as the first female captain. So, but they had these posters, and they were autographed by all the captains right next to their image. So it's got William Shatner's, it's got Avery Brooks, it's got Patrick Stewart, it's got Kate Mulgrew, it's got all of them autographed on this poster. And I bought 2 of them. And it's got a certificate of authenticity. Now, those I might sell, because I paid a pretty good chunk of money for those posters. And I've hung on to them all these years. And I don't know what kind of shape they're in. They're still in the tube in my garage, wrapped up plastic. So I'm hoping they survived the mice. Because, you put stuff in your garage, you're going to get mice. That's just how it is. But anyway, so that's the kind of stuff I got. I am going to give away a lot of stuff. I apologize if that made noise. I just hit my microphone with my hand. Sorry about that. Okay, before I get too far off track here, I'm going to play you the history of Red Digital Cinema. And this is from the Camera Zone. Just give you a little, the owner of Red Digital also started Oakley. And Oakley was purchased from him by the Sunglass Hut. And he used the funds from that to start Red Digital. So let me play the video for you. The audio came out kind of tinny. I edited it, made it a little better, but my facilities here are not first class, so I apologize for the sound. Here you go.
Industry has seen many changes over the last 100 years. From black and white pictures to 3D pictures, everything has come by holding the hand of the camera. Film camera companies are many, even though they are prominent as well. But major changes came after the revolution of the Red Cinema Company. For the first time, they introduced the 4K film camera at an affordable price for the filmmaker. Moreover, they brought out the film industry from the traditional 35mm film cameras. They did many more things in the film camera industry. In this video, we're going to discuss the history of the Red camera. So without further delay, let's jump into the video. With the dream of delivering affordable 4K digital cinema cameras, Jim Jannard founded Red Cinema in 2005. Basically, he got this idea when he first bought a Sony HDR FX1 video camera. There he found two major problems. Number one, files needed to be converted with software from Lumiere HD. And number two, it was not viewable on the Mac OS. That's why he collaborated with Lumiere HD's owner, Frederick Lumiere, to develop an alternative solution to 35mm film cameras in the cinema camera. Frederick Lumiere introduced him to Ted Schulowitz, who was the first employee of Red Camera. The early team members were involved in research on how to make digital cameras for Hollywood. They wanted to replace the traditional 2K version with 4K. This unconventional idea was not easily executed because along with the 4K development, they had to consider the focusing quality of DSLR cameras without sacrificing frame rate, which was quite tough. Meanwhile, people started criticizing their unrealistic projects. But overlooking all the criticism and difficulties, in 2006 at the NAB show, Jannard announced that Red would build a 4K digital cinema camera called the Red 1. After a year of undisclosed research, Red Cinema was able to make the Red 1. This camera brought revolution in the industry. At the time, it was able to capture up to 120 frames per second at 2K resolution and 60 frames per second at 4K resolution. Moreover, for making the post-production process easier, this camera was equipped with a sensor named Mysterium, which can capture RAW. Though it's currently very common, back in 2007, it was an unconventional invention that changed the whole cinema industry. Many popular movies like The Amazing Spider-Man, Pirates of the Caribbean, and The Great Gatsby were shot with this camera. In the beginning of Red, many directors did not want to come into their system because they were already used to their traditional 35mm film cameras. That's why Red started educating directors about the importance and the benefits of digital films. Flexible post-production of raw and higher resolution videos was central to the Red philosophy. After approaching lots of directors, in March 2007, director Peter Jackson completed a camera test of two prototype Red 1 cameras, which became the 12-minute World War I film Crossing the Line. After watching this, director Steven Soderbergh was also interested in Red cameras, and he shot his film named Che, and Red camera technology was used in the film's production, and this digital revolution changed the whole industry. As a result, in 2011, prominent film camera brands like Panavision, Arri, and Eaton announced they would no longer be producing analog cameras. Another aspect is like other film cameras, Red did not want to maintain supremacy in their industry. As a result, while Arri, Panavision, and Eaton were focusing on the high-profile filmmakers, Red understood the huge market of low-budget indie filmmakers and started making cameras for them. Red thought that indie filmmakers have a great possibility to work in different formats of video production, and therefore in the future they have a great chance to work with Red. In this way, they became the talk of the town in the cinema camera industry. Red became more popular with both high-profile directors and indie filmmakers who wanted to digitize their production workflow. Moreover, great filmmakers like Steven Soderbergh and Peter Jackson showed their trust in Red. The glorious event came in 2021 when David Fincher shot the movie Mank using the Red Ranger Helium 8K camera, and this movie got an Oscar in the Best Cinematography category in 2021. Apart from that, Red makes an entire ecosystem. Recently, they launched Komodo 6K, which is featured with a Super 35 sensor. When users use this piece of the camera, they not only use the camera, but also the other accessories. Red started a trend of new technology adaptation that other brands are now following. Though early adoption is hardly seen in the film camera industry, Red Camera constantly changes their technology every year. They not only brought a huge change in their camera, but also in their chipsets. They introduced multiple types of chipsets, such as Mysterium, Mysterium X, and Red Dragon, etc. Getting still images or video with multiple mounting setups, Red debuted digital stills and motion capture system in 2009 and introduced Epic X first digital still motion camera with interchangeable lenses. 6 years later, in 2015, Red became more aggressive in their inventions and introduced the DSMC2 family of cameras. Under this line, they launched Weapon 8K VV and Weapon 6K, which were followed by the Red Raven 4.5K and Scarlet W 5K. In 2016, for the first time, they installed an 8K sensor named Helium in their two top-notch cameras, Red Epic W and Weapon 8K S35. This weapon was used in making Marvel Studios' Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. In this way, they continue their march of success in the film camera industry. But innovation is still going on. Recently, they announced the Red V Raptor camera. This camera belongs to one of the latest DSMC3 family of cameras. Red V Raptor can capture the video 8K full sensor video at up to 120 frames per second and 6K at 160 frames per second. And this is one of the latest cameras of Red Digital Cinema. In 2017, Red showed their intention to enter the smartphone market, and in August 2018, they introduced their first smart Hydrogen One, featuring a 5.7-inch holographic display and integration with existing camera products. This phone showed many hopes. However, the smartphone was a critical disappointment because the hardware was outdated and features were not industry standard. So with a lack of capability, the phone commercially flopped. In 2019, they decided to discontinue this product line. In short, the Red Cinema Company changed the whole scenario of the film camera industry. Red Camera is the first brand that always prefers customer experience rather than maintaining supremacy. So that's all about today's video of the history and rise of Red Camera. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, give a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon if you want to see more videos like this in your feed.
If you guys only knew the issues I had here today and everything I had to go through to fix them. But you won't see any of that. It will just flow smoothly from one to the next. What happened was after the history of Red Digital Cinema, I forgot to unmute my mic. So I sat here for about 3 minutes just talking to myself. So I had to re-record that. You're not going to get exactly the same thing, but I'm here, and you can actually hear me, which might be a good or a bad thing, depending on whether you like my show or not. But anyway, uh, and also once I posted the podcast, I got dinged by Facebook because there's this Arab fellow who I can't pronounce his name. And he has created a company that buys copyrights and lays claim to copyrights of other people's materials and then puts a claim in on Facebook. So if you have a podcast, you're going to hear from this guy eventually. He's going to claim your podcast somewhere down the road. He's claimed ours. This is the second time he's come after us. Now, I disputed it this time. Facebook has an automated way of disputing it. So I disputed it, and they took down they put like a little thing underneath your podcast that says that this content belongs to this guy. And here's a way you can see more of his content. Well, I don't like that because he doesn't own the content on this show. He was claiming that little clip at the beginning that has that imitation 20th Century Fox thing that has my name on it, I made that years ago. It was very hard to make, believe me. And I used to use the 20th Century Fox fanfare on it, but that, nowadays, forget it. There's no such thing as fair use anymore. It doesn't exist. So I went and found a royalty-free fanfare and put that in. Now, I paid for the royalty-free. I downloaded it off a website where you had to pay for it. It was like $3 or something silly. That wasn't a problem. So I went ahead and I bought it. So he doesn't know that. That's royalty-free. So there ain't no way he can lay claim to that. And the image itself is strictly a parody and therefore is protected. And he can't lay claim to that. The history of red digital cinema, there's no way he can lay claim to that either, because I'm doing a review of that video and that fits within the fair use thing. And so they come after me on that again, I'll be fighting them on that too. So that was my day. How was yours? Hopefully better than that. So anyway, I've had, so on StreamYard, you're not going to see the entire podcast. If you go to StreamYard, look for it, but you don't. I mean, you go to Facebook. And as soon as I get done piecing all of this together, I'm going to upload it to Facebook, and you'll have a podcast to see there on Facebook. If you watched it live, you know what a mess it was. I apologize for the mess that the live podcast was, because it wasn't good. So if you didn't like that, I mean, I had issues with the history of red digital cinema. What I use this software called EASE, EASE, and it allows you to capture video off of YouTube. Well, the settings on there, somehow they got reset, and they got changed from system audio to my microphone. So you can picture what occurred is while I was recording the video, I coughed, blew my nose, and you got to hear all of that. And so that was no good. So I went back and I edited it. I pulled that piece of video out and put in the one that had system audio, and I fixed that. So you are no longer going to listen to me blowing my nose. And I apologize, believe me, to the people that listened live for that fiasco. It was a disaster. So please download the new version. You'll like it much better. And again, I apologize. Just to tell you, Melody had something come up this morning, and she had to rush out and do some family things and take care of some problems. Her son got pneumonia, was in the hospital getting pumped full of stuff to fix his problem. And his wife had to go with them. Well, they have 3 little babies at home. So Melanie and her husband had to go and take care of the little babies while that was happening. So Melanie's still in the middle of all of that right now. So, please forgive Melanie for not being on the show today. She had good reason. And I talked to Melanie, and our guest, which is Carolyn Willman, she will be with us again very soon. We're going to reschedule her. She's the contest queen. She's very interested. She has her own podcast under Contest Queen. I'm sure you can find it on all the usual podcast places. I found it on Audible, which I have an account with Audible, and I downloaded and listened to the first episode that Audible has with a gentleman named Jason Block, and they were discussing the Pepsi Where's My Plane documentary that's playing on Netflix. I watched a little bit of the first episode of that because it didn't look interesting to me, so I didn't know what it was. But when they were talking about what had gone on with that, which I discussed earlier in the podcast, I found it very interesting. So I'm looking forward to having her on the show. I think it'll be quite a good podcast. I think she'll be a great guest. So anyway, that's what all went on. So my apologies for the mess that the show was. Hopefully doing what I'm doing here and the editing will fix it so it's at least watchable. So remember that I'm just an amateur doing this stuff. I have Movavi is the software that I use to do my editing. We use StreamYard for our streaming and so forth. So we don't have the expensive stuff, but it comes out okay, I think. And anyway, here at my faux Red Digital Cinema site, where I will be tomorrow, I'll be right here tomorrow plugging away. Even though I'm 67 years old, I'm still working. And I'm going to keep working as long as possible because I enjoy working. I don't want to just sit around the house. I like doing something worthwhile. And I enjoy the company and the people there. So it's a lot of fun. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the podcast. I'm sure it'll be a little early. I'm not sure on the timing here because everything's gone on this morning. Or this afternoon, that is. So y'all take care. I got to go to Walmart, buy my grandson some stuff he's looking for. And that'll be the end of my day. So y'all take it easy. I'm looking over here. There we go. So I can hit the end recording button. Let's see where we at. Okay. So y'all take care of yourselves and we'll see you next week. Ta-ta.